they don't realize that this is a contact sport. If you're not contacting these people, somebody else surely is. And, you need to be thinking about not just where they are today, but they're a business owner and they've got a professional corporation, a dentist, a lawyer, and the like, and they're drawing a good salary now. They might not count as high net worth down today, but you want to plant that seed. You want to be making sure that you're talking to them about their exit strategies, because maybe they're not thinking about where they're going to be in 10 years. But if you show that you are thinking about them, where they're going to be in 10 years, you're creating that opportunity for a high net worth account.
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. So welcome, everyone. We have a great episode on this particular podcast about a topic that is near and dear to many people's hearts, especially financial advisors, and that's dealing with the high net worth marketplace in Canada. And I have a very special guest. I got Simon Bowers, and he actually is one of the people heads up our own high net worth section in our organization. And when I was putting this together, I was thinking about a quote that I read some time ago. I don't know if it's a quote or a story, but F. Scott Fitzgerald was one time talking to Hemingway, and he told Hemingway, he's like, the rich are different from you and me. To which Hemingway replied, yes, they have a lot more money. And I think that can be described as sort of this market that is ever expanding in Canada, and continues to need to be serviced, but in a very specialized manner. So Simon, he has lived and breathed this, so I'll let him tell you a story. Simon, thank you very much for coming on this particular podcast.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Chris. It's nice to follow the esteemed series of guests you've had on. It's a great podcast. I've enjoyed catching up with all the past episodes.
Excellent. At least I got one fan, so that's good. At least one. There's you and my mom. So far we're doing pretty good. Simon, why don't you tell us your story? How did you get here? And how did you take this particular path in your career, and maybe give a couple of examples?
Yeah, sure. So born and raised in Toronto, oldest of 5 kids. Immigrant parents came here, so not a lot of networks and connections. And other than being a hockey player, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for a career. So after school, I sort of took a while to find my feet. I started off as a corporate bill collector, and I knew I didn't want to do that. Calling large corporations and asking them to pay their bills on time is a bit of an art, but it gets old quickly. Yeah. I Manulife for one of my corporate clients, and I joined them just in time for their demutualization, which was a really interesting project. Taking a mutual insurance company and turning it into a public company. And there was a lot to learn, and I just found that it was like drinking from a fire hose. I couldn't get enough. It was when I read my first prospectus, and I was hooked. From Manulife, I joined E-Trade Financial, independent brokerage firm, and worked there for a couple of years. And from there, I joined an investment counseling firm that was a client of E-Trade's. And I stayed there for 20 years. So wow. I have grown up in the private wealth business. We saw our assets under management grow from just over $200 million with basically an anchor client to just under $3.8 billion when I left.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah, so a lot of growth, and that was, just Canadian, simple investment management. Not a lot of bells and whistles on top of it. Just straightforward ahead, simple, easy to articulate investing. And the way I wound up at IPC was, you throw in a global pandemic. My wife and I welcomed our first child. We had a lot of upheaval already, and I figured I'd get all my midlife crisis
do it all at once.
All at once. So I was approached back about this time last year, and I did a lot of sleuthing to see, the outward-facing culture on LinkedIn and similar is one of a very happy firm and a very progressive and collegial firm. I did a lot of digging and decided, yeah, I would take this chance. It was an exciting opportunity to redraw high net worth inside this organization, and I have not looked back. It's been everything that I could have hoped for.
Oh, that's good. Actually, it's been good for both of us. So going down that path, thinking of again, F. Scott Fitzgerald saying, "The rich are different from you and me." You've got 20 years experience dealing with the what I'm going to call the rich, the ultra rich, or how we define it in the industry is the high net worth, the ultra high net worth. How are they different? Are they different? They're all humans, of course. They just have, as Hemingway said, they got a lot more money. How are they different, and how would you service them, which would be a little bit different than I'm going to call your retail clients? And maybe you can expand upon that for our listeners.
Yeah, so one of the things to think about is if you've ever deposited a 5-figure check into the bank, you're immediately confronted by a teller calling a manager who wants to sell you a product of some sort, and so high net worth clients will attract a level of attention, and they'll receive solicitations, whether that's mass mailers, whether that's a call from the bank branch, whether that's hey, I know a guy. Friend of a friend. And so, there is a service requirement in the high net worth space that may not be there in the mass affluent, because they tend to own their securities outright. They'll own an SMA, they'll own individual securities. Their assets are more portable. And so the servicing requirement, you'll need to have to up your game a little bit in order to keep clients. Attracting them is one proposition. The retention, of course, is another, because once you've got a high net worth client, how do you service them in a way that keeps the wolves at bay? Because they are out there, and I think where we've got a structural advantage here is that we define high net worth as the $1 million entree. That's where we would think of somebody as being high net worth. For a bank, that's a commodity, right? That's going to be somebody who continues to be put into a very bank experience, which benefits the bank, but not necessarily the client. You're not going to receive a lot of advice. You're not going to receive an overlay. Whereas at IPC, for our high net worth offering, you have dedicated portfolio manager. You've got two. I work with another gentleman here in Toronto, Lee Bose. And so you're effectively getting two portfolio managers, providing the service, meeting with clients, making sure that the clients are invested properly, and helping calm them down and give them a reason to stay with the advisor, to create that stickiness around the platform where the clients want to stay because they have a dedicated portfolio manager. And that's not something you get if you're strictly invested in a McKinsey, a fine shop, but no portfolio manager is going to come to town and answer personal direct questions.
Right.
So
portfolio.
there is a servicing need. I think there's a danger in generalizing. Some high net worth clients will simply say, "I never want a phone call," and some will call you weekly, and that's the same as in the mass affluent space as well. You're going to have your nervous clients. You're going to have your "don't call me" clients. You're going to have people who mail in checks for their RSP contributions, and you never talk to them. I don't think they're structurally or materially different. They're people. They have the same sorts of anxieties around the market and how that impacts what they're trying to do. They do have a servicing requirement, and they have more money, so they're used to it.
Right. And also, I would think, in the scope, and way back when I was a financial advisor, there was two things that of course, that is built into what you're saying, which is find me somebody that I can trust, because I've worked very hard to get where I am. I don't want to lose it. I'm sure you can expand upon this, but the concerns about family and intergenerational wealth transfer, and are my kids going to be okay? Are my grandkids going to be okay? Are they going to blow all the money? And maybe you can, maybe even share a couple of stories where we've actually experienced that type of thing with those clients.
Yeah. So in my previous shop, there was the anchor client that I mentioned, and they had significant amounts of money, and they got most of their mail to our head office, and that kept the statements away from prying eyes. And I don't think they wanted their kids to know how much they had, because that would mean that the kids would sort of stop stop working. I've seen it from the other side, where we had lottery winners who pulled in just shy of $50 million on the Lotto Max and proceeded.
Wow,
to
that was a
spend.
great day.
It's not a bad Friday's work,
Exactly.
They
Buy a
bought
lot
that
of
in
beer.
March of 2009, and they're currently, I think they're underwater on capital contribution. And so, that's the spectrum right there, where you've got people who want to build it and make sure that it lasts. You've got people who spend it in a profligate sort of way. Again, high net worth doesn't mean that you're not, you don't act in a robotic fashion. You have all of the same wants and immediate satisfactions and need for dopamine hits that we all get. Shopping's fun.
Actually, I read a stat once. Speaking of lottery winners, and actually, when I was an advisor, I had 3 lottery winners that I looked after, and the stats prove out true. And you're sort of saying this. The stat is that if you win a lottery within 7 years, you will be in a worse financial position than if you never won it in the first place. Which I find is an incredible stat. But as I said, you've experienced it.
And that's not to say that when the Lotto Max is at $60 million, I don't occasionally put down $5 myself, Jeff. But that's more for fun than for any practical sense of I'm going to win. Generally, if you're buying lottery tickets, it's because you don't have financial discipline, you don't have long-term thinking, or maybe you simply without other means to extricate yourself. You're looking at $10 million and thinking that'd change everything. It would, right. But only if you kept it.
I was going to say it would, but for a while, maybe not forever, depending if you don't get sound.
So 7 years.
Right, in the stat. And I think what we're also seeing, a phenomenon in the market, and you can probably back this up, is we're sitting in the middle, and we've all in the industry known this is happening, which is the sudden money crowd, right? This demographic, which, by the way, I fall into this demographic where, you're now in a position where you're getting inheritances, people are selling businesses, farms, I don't know how many different farmers that we've dealt with just in the last 12 months who have come into substantial amounts of money. Yep. And they've lived a fairly frugal life. And then all of a sudden, $10 million, $20 million comes from these big events. And it's a little overwhelming. How do you deal with that? Not from I'm going to say a financial point of view, but what kind of questions do you get into with those clients, and how do you help them through that process?
Well, this is an intro. We'd have an example of this where Lee had a sudden wealth client who sold a farm. There was a rezoning by the 401, the big highway here in Ontario, and they suddenly had more money than they'd ever imagined they'd have in their mid-30s, a couple of young kids. And so Lee sat down with them and said to them, we need to think about things like estate planning. And these are people in their 30s who probably thought, well, I have a will. And, now you need to start thinking about what are you going to do with $5 million and young children? These are things that can happen. So you need to have a more engaged conversation than, do you have a will? There are, do you want to set up trusts, testamentary trusts for your children? Do you want to, look at setting up, some trusts while you're still here and do, some capital appreciation in the hands, and move some of that off your personal balance sheet for the kids. So, right. You wind up having some interesting conversations with people. I had two new clients up in northern Alberta who came into about $1.5 million each. A massive sum of money, a reward for the business that they built over all the years. And they came in, and one of them was talking about how much gifting he wanted to do to his grandchildren. And the other gentleman wrote on his IPQ, his intake form, that he was terrified of losing all of his money. And so these gentlemen were about a year apart in age, and you're suddenly having two very different conversations with them. They're starting at the same place. You want them to arrive at the same place, but you've got to moderate some of their emotional biases and make sure that they understand the plan, that it's well articulated, and that they feel like they're participating in the plan.
And I think to that point, especially when it comes to larger sums of money to be invested, and then personalities, different family dynamics, all of those things, This is why the advantage of a personalized plan, like one of the things that I know both you and Lee do, is no client is the same, right? Everyone thinks, high net worth is about, a templated portfolio, put them in this, put them in that. The portfolio is probably, if it's not secondary, it's third or fourth down the line. It's really understanding what that client needs, what their family needs, and then coming up with the solution as opposed to just selling the solution. And so often I see, to your point, banks and, some of the other ones, they're just selling solutions. They don't even care about the customization aspect of high net worth individuals.
The way I couch it is I always sit down with the client and say, what do you have? What do you want? And then we can determine what do you need. It's a misattributed Einstein quote, but a good one nonetheless. Whereas if he had an hour to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes thinking of the solution. And so, this is again where the banks would look at $1 million account and simply go to the warehouse and pull something off the shelf. You are 55 years old, you have $1 million, you need this. And there's not a lot of listening, not a lot of customization, not a lot of optimization that goes into what the banks offer you. The banks are very, very good at doing one thing, and that's extracting money from people. They're almost admirable the way that they're able to do that. And so, they're not as interested in your personal experience as they are in their bank experience. And so, this is again where, at $1 million, it becomes a commodity to a larger institution, to an advisor who has, successfully onboarded $1 million account. That's a material piece of business for the advisor. It's well worth keeping and well worth growing. And that's a great start to sort of that garden of high net worth individuals that you're looking to grow, because people tend to cluster in like circumstances. I make about the same amount of money as my neighbors. We have about the same age brackets. When you attract a high net worth client, you're likely to start attracting more.
And this is, building a wealth management business. These are the people that you want to attract, but also, let's face it, it's also the people you can do the most good for, because there is this dynamic aspect of their finances. There's this dynamic, ever-changing, whether it's tax, whether it's estate, whether it's talking to their kids, whether it's grandkids, to your point, trusts, there's a lot of moving parts, and you really need a level of expertise that is, generally not there in the, I'm going to say the general public financial advisors. How would somebody go about, I guess, going down this path? Like, you've seen it before. What are some of the things that people do well in this space, and what are the things that they do poorly?
So I think one of the things that people do poorly is they don't realize that this is a contact sport. If you're not contacting these people, somebody else surely is. And, you need to be thinking about not just where they are today, but they're a business owner and they've got a professional corporation, a dentist, a lawyer, and the like, and they're drawing a good salary now. They might not count as high net worth down today, but you want to plant that seed. You want to be making sure that you're talking to them about their exit strategies, because maybe they're not thinking about where they're going to be in 10 years. But if you show that you are thinking about them, where they're going to be in 10 years, you're creating that opportunity for a high net worth account. It sounds like a long way down the road, but you're creating that opportunity. You're having the conversations and letting people know that you're thinking about them. That works. That works really well to create a mass affluent client, a sticky client who wants to be with you as a planner. If you're talking about how things will look for them in 10 years, they'll stay with you for 10 years.
Right. So, and I think that's a very important point. And we've said this on this podcast, we've had, to your point, we've had professional after professional, successful after successful, and it really boils down to the same thing: communication, regular, consistent communication that in many cases is personalized to that particular individual situation. In other words, at the end of the day, the thing that is our competitive advantage as advisors, we care about our clients. We care about their future. We care about their kids, their families, where they're going. And you don't get that same sort of fuzziness, if I use that word correctly, in some of the larger institutions. So I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the attention to detail that our advisors take with their clients. I go into investment reviews and meet with clients and prospects, and I feel really well armed with the amount of information that we have to make decisions on behalf of the client. And the advisors are doing a great job in setting not just the private wealth team, but especially the clients for success. Not everybody who approaches private wealth is necessarily a true private wealth client, but it's great to know that we've asked the questions and we've got the information and we're able to work with the advisor and set them on the path, whether it's inside private wealth or whether there's a solution in the IPC family that works better for them.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent. So now, Simon, you've listened to this cast, you know what's coming next, which is my rapid fire questions. I ask you 3 questions, and it's the first thing that pops into your mind.
Okay.
So the first thing, what do you love to do?
This would have been a slam dunk answer for me until about 2 years ago. My favorite thing to do is cook. I love to take simple ingredients.
We better get together then. Me too. Well, I love to eat. So look at me.
I like the idea of cooking and really mastering something, and that lets you explore as well. If you follow a recipe, you get set outcomes. That's like a financial plan. If you freehand, maybe you come up with something that's better or something that's worse, but it's all your own. And that would have been my answer until 2 years ago. But my wife and I welcomed the most active and engaged baby recently, and I didn't know how much fun I was going to have being a parent. It's been everything I could have hoped for.
Oh, I love it. And my next rapid fire question is: can you remember what is your most meaningful conversation that you've had with a client, one that you remember to this day over your 20 years of dealing with high net worth people? Is there any moment that just stands out for you?
There are a lot. I think the most rewarding thing, and this comes up a lot, is to say to people, stop me if you don't understand everything. I want you to understand everything. And then they'll stop you and they'll ask the question, and that it was important to them. It made them feel comfortable not asking, or they think it's a silly question, but it's an important question, and so you're creating that comfort environment. And I think that getting somebody to feel comfortable about something that they were confused about. People hire an advisor, a portfolio manager. That's a humbling experience to say, I don't know what to do with this. And then to hand yourself over so totally and then feel comfortable, in a short period of time is really rewarding.
Yeah, no. And I think all of us have had those moments where you're like, you can see there's been that breakthrough. And also you can get over, I'm going to call it a barrier that you didn't even know was there because, using that technique to answer the question. And my last rapid fire question is, how do you want to be remembered?
I hope this isn't a posthumous question. I'm
going to say just in general.
Somebody who gave an honest effort, somebody who showed up and tried to make things better. I have a responsible investing credential. I like the idea of looking at ESG. I like the way the investment industry is trending that way. I just want people to speak well of me and think, showed up, tried hard, had some fun, and the world was better because he was here.
And was a good cook, which I will. I'm going to take you up on that one day.
I mean, that's to be determined. It's
as a great eater, I will be the judge of that. So in my rant, it's been great having you, Simon, and really, again, going back to Scott Fitzgerald saying, the rich are different, and they're different because they do have more money, and they have to be dealt with in a very specific manner. And as I said, as financial advisors, it is our responsibility to make sure that we ask the right questions, that we probe deep, that we really understand their situation, their family situation, how they want to deal with everything from taxation to estate, and of course that their investments give them the objectives that they've set. And usually, to your point, it's usually don't lose me money. It took me this long to accumulate it. Just don't lose it. It's great if you make me money, but just don't lose it. And it's a specialty. And, the work that you and Lee do in consulting with our advisors on all of their high net worth client. I think it's been invaluable. And, I just hear success story after success story after success story. So, thank you very much for all the work you do. Thank you for being in the podcast. Any final word for our listeners?
No, I just thank you for inviting me, and just say pick up the phone. Feel free to reach out to either of us. We're happy to consult. Whether you're MFDA, IROC, IPC1, we're looking to help your clients have a better experience, and that means that we're helping the advisors have a better experience too. So, we're here to help.
Yep, that is great. And I'm going to also extend out an offer to my listeners. As everyone knows, I'm open for virtual coffees. I had 4 or 5 this week. It's been great, getting great feedback from the show, getting great feedback from our listeners. And if anyone wants to just talk about their high net worth strategy and how they're going to deal with those clients, happy to do that call. Thanks again, Simon. Look forward to seeing you soon, maybe back on the podcast. And thank you for listening. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.